Hello, everyone, and welcome to Great Train Layouts Live. I'm your host, Nick Ozrak. It is great to be with you on yet another Thursday evening for yet another layout build. And tonight, we are going back to the land of trams, the land of the Wisbech and Upwell. Ah, and it's good to be with you guys. I encourage you to join in on the chat. And we're going to talk about why we're back in Wisbech. But first, a shout out to tonight's sponsor, Rapido Trains, makers of Rapido Trains UK, makers of fine British rolling stock, including some wagons. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to see some samples of some of the products that they're developing a bit later in the stream. So why are we back in Wisbech, aka the land of the real life Toby the tram engine? Well, the reason we are back here is because I was commissioned by Josh to build a train layout based off of what we see right here, which is Boyce's Bridge, the halfway point of the tramway. So we'll talk a little bit about the tram in case you haven't seen my At the Rail Yard review or you didn't watch the live stream that we did a couple years ago on this. So the Wisbech Upwell Tramway, this 6-mile line in eastern England that went through this very bucolic agricultural setting from the late 1880s to the 1960s. Steam powered for most of its working life, and then diesels took over for the last decade or so. So up here we have Wisbech, which is the connection with the Great Eastern Railway. This is also the Great Eastern Railway as well, but with the more conventional main line up here in Wisbech. Then plenty of pretty towns. Boyce's Bridge is where we're at here, and then it connects 6 miles to Wisbech Upwell. Upwell, there's a large yard for marshalling, where farmers can drop off their produce that is then hauled by rail to market. So Josh wants to have a train layout based on Boyce's Bridge, which is the midpoint of the railway and also where trains would meet, which is why we have these two trains here that are ready to go in opposite directions. So I thought we would start the stream by just looking at the quote-unquote real, because I know we're in a sim, but looking at this depiction of the tramway before we get to actually building it so we know what the end goal is. And so Boyce's Bridge, very, very simple scene. But simple, as we've often talked about, is not necessarily bad, especially when space is limited. And we're going to see. So Josh sent me a track plan. He said, this is the track plan that I'd like you to go with for the space. And so you'll see why this works well for what he is looking to do. Basically, what we've got here is a little depot. This would be a stop for the for all of the passenger trains, the freight trains, not necessarily freight cargo. This is my American parlance showing through, but they would stop presumably if they had to meet another train, because the WU did run off of a timetable for both its freight moves and its passenger. We have a small siding here where some degree of cargo from local farmers could be loaded, so some of the farmers maybe in these adjacent fields around here would bring their produce here as opposed to shipping it going all the way down to Upwell. And that's it. This is a very, very straightforward kind of scene. We're gonna let our trams get underway. Oh, I forgot I did that. Well, we're gonna go with that. I meant to ring the bell. There we go. That's what I meant to do. But sure, we'll let Toby's theme music guide that for tram. Okay, and then over here we've got our connecting passenger tram. So our goal is going to be to basically just recreate what we see here, which in some ways is very straightforward. The trick is that we're going to have a very narrow scenic path to work by. And part of what makes the scene is the depth of it, just having all this room for all these fields. So, what can we do in the sim to kind of allude to that? Especially since part of the goal is to not use any backdrops for reasons that will be clear shortly. Hello, Mikey. Thank you for joining us tonight. So, that gives you basically the overlay of what we're going to be doing here. So, with that said, I'm going to switch screens for just a moment, and we will be in the route that we're going to be building tonight. So, stay tuned just 1 second. And I told you it'd just be 1 second, and here we are 1 second or 10 seconds later. So this is the room that we have to work with. It is about 11 feet in the x axis, wide, long, however you'd want to say. 11 feet in this direction, 12 feet in this direction. And this is a very British approach. And what I mean by that is that I read a lot of Railway Modeler magazine, and the thing that I notice with a lot of British layouts is rather than American layouts that tend to replicate going between multiple towns, a lot of British layouts, although actually, well, a lot of British layouts tend to focus on a specific scene and doing that one scene absolute justice and running a full timetable to that scene. And because Josh has chosen the midpoint, there's a lot of opportunity for meets here. And you can see by this green, this is where we are allowed to put scenery. That is the rest is the floor is lava, you could say. We're going to go ahead. I clicked on the wrong thing. We are going to go ahead and start laying our track. I put together a pick list for this one. Figured that there'd be a lot of things that if I didn't, I'd be going back to the route that you just saw and then like, oh, what asset did I use there? What asset did I use there? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to build up this staging yard, and I'll admit that I know if one needs a staging yard quite this big. I think you could probably get it down. You could take one, maybe even two tracks off. But it doesn't take up a ton of space, so we are going to build it out as designed here. We're going to see what that ends up looking like. Partially because one could always, rather than running to a true timetable, you could always modify the timetable to add a little bit more excitement as the schedule would allow. I'm gonna. This is the connect the dots part of the show where we lay down the track. And because we have the world's most flexible flex track in Train Z, it makes for some great opportunities, but also some interesting challenges when we're trying to copy what I believe is an AnyRail design. This looks like AnyRail, which, if you're not familiar, AnyRail is a two-dimensional model railroading track plan. And as you guys who've tuned in before know, I am very much an advocate for having a track plan to bring into Train Z, because if you rely on Train Z for your track geometry, it is going to allow you to do some wonderfully crazy things that might not actually work when it comes time to place some rails on your plywood. We're going to lay this here. Hope that you guys are doing well, and hope that you are enjoying yourselves this evening, and that your modeling projects are going well. I encourage you to jump in on the chat and tell me what you're up to modeling is. For that. Okay, so our staging yard, which what's interesting with some of these British layouts that I've seen is that in cases the staging yard might even be bigger than the layout itself, which there's a case to be made for and against that. But the case for it um, is that it does allow you, it's just such a different operational approach because I'm so used to the concept of you have one train, especially when I go to operating sessions on other people's train layouts. That you have one train and you are the crew of that one train for at least a half hour, but maybe a full hour, a while, needless to say. And with a lot of these British layouts, it's more the trains make cameos. So they make an appearance, hey, here I am, and then they disappear in some capacity. So it might be like what we have here tonight, where it comes from one direction, it enters stage left, it makes its appearance, and then it exits stage right. It might be a terminal where the train appears. It the locomotive runs around the cars, and then maybe servicing, and then it disappears again. A lot of different approaches, but basically it amounts to kind of what you're looking for. And the thing that I've seen with some of these British layouts that use that approach is that they do put in insane levels of detail, and not just to the scenery, although that's certainly the case as well, but they put in insane detail on the having working signals that could be operated by little levers, and so that it feels like you're sitting in a signal box kind of thing. There's a lot of detail that you could go when you're building something so relatively speaking small. You could afford to focus on those details a bit more. And especially if it's something where a lot of these layouts of this nature are designed to be operated by one, maybe two people. There's something to be said for being able to kind of maximize your operational potential for that piece of time. I should also mention I don't have any music going because for me this feels like we need bucolic, and I would be putting on classical music. But if you're a fan of classical music, I've got a playlist in the description that you can listen to some music in the background. But if classical music isn't seen, then you can just join me. That's okay too. And that's going to be pretty much all of our track. Boy, that was quick. But I took a look at this when he sent it to me, and I'm like, oh, this will be a nice straightforward one. Only not so straightforward bit, but some of this I'm probably going to do off stream is having to do the dig holes in the fascia for this. So for the sake of the stream, we're just going to kind of mark the edges, and then we're going to put the scenery within those edges. Later, I will clean it up. I'll add the dig holes for the released version of it. So we're going to put in those borders now so I could kind of remind myself of what are the guidelines. So I'm going to fascia. I'm going to put that on the fascia level. And which one do I want to use? I want to use that one. A bit too imposing, methinks. We'll just use. Yeah, we'll just use that, and then I'll shrink it down. So, or not shrink it, but this is the portion that is going to have scenery on it, like. I do like these British designs though, because I think there is something to be said for that simplicity, and not a British design, but it made me think of British design. A little over about a year and a half ago, we streamed Orford, the Canadian National Inspired Passenger Terminal. Did that? That was an N scale layout we did over a couple builds. And the thing about that layout is that it is an American slash Canadian, depending on your interpretation, scene, but it's all one station and that's it, and a staging yard. And that was something where I think a lot of when I've thought about what would I model if I had the room. I mean, I have a lot of Canadian stock, and if I had the room for a layout where they could run in a circle, what would I do with that? And for a long time, I've solely been along the lines of I would do a branch line. But then I did that one, and I started to think, well, maybe there's something to be said about just an individual. And so that actually led to the engine terminal, which kind of see a little bit of the in the background. Um, but we did that as a stream about a year ago as well. That was January of 24. Okay, so this is our scenic portion. So I can now turn off the base map so we can see our. So as you can see now that we've put in the parameters, the outline of where the scenery can be placed, we start to see this interesting scenic dilemma in the sense that this is not thick. So what we're going to end up doing is really compressing how wide everything was. So you saw when we were looking at the Wisbech and Upwell, the full sized train sim version, that the road was pretty wide, and then you had the wide fields. And in this case, we're going to really narrow the road so that we could get a little bit more of those fields visible. Because as you could tell from the layout, this isn't going against a wall. This is going to be in the center of a space. And I was talking with Josh about this, and he said, well, it might have a backdrop when built, and it would be along this edge here, but it might not. And we're going to do it without, because honestly, even if I put a background here in Train Z, it would just be sky anyway. I'd have to do a custom backdrop if I was going to have like the fens. So, okay. You guys who are there, tell me if it cuts out. I just got an error message on my side of things, so I wanted to make sure that I haven't lost connectivity. So let's. Oh, actually, right. I was going to use a track for this. Well, good thing with Z is that it's very easy to replace track. So we're just going to do a track replacement of this into street running track. Actual route. We're going to do it in a area. We're just going to highlight this whole area from here to here. In, yes, and voila. There is our track. Glad I remembered that. And then we need our station building. That? Or no, not that one. So that's, yeah. I don't know why I'm getting an error about. Okay, so this is our station building. That right about here. Then we need, I want to put fences up now. Yeah, probably just to outline it. I'm going to put the fence really close to the track. Oh, that was the no, that was the fence for this. It was the inner fence. Like so. Because I have a lot to do with trackers. My goal is to make this look like a miniaturized version of what we started at. Then we have telephone poles, right? Well, that probably run that along the roadway. I don't know. That's a little bit distracting. we'll just have it kind of come into the quick little. Now I'm feeling like I'd have to go back to get. But we're gonna leave that for now. Crossing. Crossing here. Getting some weird errors tonight. Oh, got the. Oh, I'm realizing I didn't. Oh well, I'll invent those as we go along. Hello, Kevin Siebert. Um, Mikey, the rural terminal, you did good. Well, back might be a good basis for a larger layout as either starting point or an end point for it. Um, yes, I know what you're talking about. I think you're talking about Mountain A. Um, that is a killer plan. I love that. Barbed wire fence. So this is what's going to separate our tram from our field. And we're going to go somewhat tight on it. Not too tight. About. And because we want to have enough room that the fields are not really a lot we need to add in here as far as building. Really, the fields are kind of part of the star of it. That's the one thing that going to be when it comes to actually constructing this. You've got this thin little slice with the potential that you wouldn't even have a backdrop, so making it feel expansive. So our road ordinarily would be probably all the way to here, but I'm going to make it a little skinnier. Basically just a little, just barely wide enough that you could get horse and cart by. Partially depends what era you would do, but his when Josh sent this to me, he sent it to me with a timetable where he'd be running pasture. Pasture service discontinued on tramway in 27. So you would have some early autos, but it's more likely that you're running this pre-auto. The advantage of that is I think it makes for an interesting era, something that's pre-automobile, but also then if it's not entirely evident how much we've shrunk the road by, then that allows us room for more. Because part of what I'm looking at as a challenge with this, I'd like to get a couple of cottages. And I think I'm going to do that next before I do any more fences. See some of this. But this will be interesting. So let's look at some of the houses. I picked out these houses based on what I had placed full size Wisbech Tramway. And man, you start to realize how little space we have because this is a skinny thing. So I'm thinking this is where we might need to get a little proto land. Because if we put this is about as small a cottage as I would put. And yes, it does have that little extension on the back end. Maybe I have one that doesn't have that and that in here. Zone, admittedly. Well, actually, we could kind of fit that. I mean, it is tight on that road. It's the only thing I'm not crazy about. I'm kind of inclined to of a that's this is one of the things. But the oh hello guys, hello Rich. What time period is the current layout? I'm guessing it's double O. Yes, you are correct. This is double O scale. And Jimmy Lambert, something passionately. Well, I'm glad you guys could make it. Um, I guess passing on adult night at the roller rink has its perks, given the right Thursday. Well, yes, you won't get roller derby here. You will get a different kind. So I could try to fit this in here, like so. Might just that. I might just have to settle for a couple of these. I was hoping to go for something a little bit bigger, but man, we do not have a lot of room. That is, this is tight. About as tight as, and I think I'll probably have to end. This is where being able to pre-visualize has its perks because you can look at a two-dimensional drawing like what Josh sent me and say, well, that has enough space. There's clearly enough space for the track, but do I have enough space for the scenery, or could I go wider or narrower? But um, I like a good challenge. This is a way of keeping me on my toes. So, a couple of cottages, and it widens here, so I'm inclined to put another house here. In fact, part of what I'm thinking of with regards to this, another interesting element to this, because it's all flat, is how can I make the ends scenic before we transition in staging yard, which is unscenic. And so I'm thinking on one end, I want to have kind of an orchardy type of thing. And the other end, I want to use a bigger, if I can fit it. Oh, here's another building. Old, I'd forgotten to put that. So we could put this over. Actually, we could switch. Maybe we'll put this over here so that there's a little bit more room. Ooh, yep, that. So we've got our building. That way, I mean, this is tight, but it's also true that if you don't place any people would be okay, but if you don't place any vehicles here, you're not going to notice that it's a really tight space. You need a frame of reference for that. Mikey, I could make the road part of the main line as some weird road rail line setup. So that's actually exactly what we're going to do because that is how the tramway works. So you notice how this track texture I'm using is actually designed to go in a street. So the road does share the track. It's just that the road was like it included the track and was wider. But yes, you've got the right idea. We're going to be doing that once we start texturing. Right now, looking at getting my buildings. Um, oh, right. These are my switch points. I just happened to click on it. I need invisible switch stands because the switches are embedded in the. Where did I put that? I had. Oh, here's the one. So this is a wider spot. So I could put a house. Just got a well, not if I put it. If I put it like this, it works perfect. So then we have a slightly bigger house, which can serve as a way of scenically providing a little bit of a scenic block before we make that turn and go into staging. Um, LMRC. Period seems a little confused to me. The unfitted vans are in the earlier GR livery. The open wagons are in the later GR livery. Yes. Um, yes, that is me being a little cavalier with the with the rolling stock. Once we play test this, I will pick the right rolling stock. Is it obvious I'm American? Howdy, y'all. Along those lines. Okay. Bring that back to probably better. So we've got our buildings. We've got our basic fence outline. So do I feel like doing field or, well, I guess I'm feeling like I need to do some kind of remember. Do remember, man. Okay, so that Wisbech and Upwell Tramway that I showed you at the beginning was, if you're not familiar, from 2019, in 2019, I started making the entire Wisbech and Upwell Tramway for Train Z. Finished a couple of years afterward. Um, so I have certain numbers ingrained into my memory based on all of the time I spent building that route, and one of them is which textures for the roads. Like, oh, that's PVR 23. Because, of course, I remembered that off the top of my head. So, this is the base road texture. So, we can kind of start to see what that. So, yes, to your earlier comment, Mikey, the road is sharing with the track. It's a little bit narrower than it actually was supposed to be, but. And I'm realizing the track cover. I'll fix that. Then I want 24 and 25 just to vary it a little bit. All quite. Or not width, but one and five. That one, yeah. Just varying my. Here, bits of it, 8 variety. Oh, just so that road. This is very much still early days of vehicle. So, LMRC, this is all going to be post 19. I would say if we were going to settle on a year, we're talking 1923. Well, no, you'd have more cars then. We're basically looking at when J70s come into the picture, which was the 19th. But we're also needing to place it before passenger service 27. Take your pick as far as air is concerned. Next, I'm going to go with a PR grass, and then I will add feet. I'm going to put PR grass. Definitely don't like that one. No, I guess we'll use this for base. We'll vary it. Be a couple of roads that split out from this. I will. It's definitely two-way, perfect, manicured lawn kind of look, but it's a starting point, and then we'll that. Actually, I might still have that. That's in. Yep, there it is. Oh, perfect. Okay. I like when I save. One of the reasons I like working in train is the ability to have these sort of go-to shopping lists. So I could say, okay, I'm going to do this project. What are some of the assets that I'm going to be most in need of? And especially with something that large, it's like, oh, you base reminded me of which ground texture. So thank you, past me, for setting me up for success for future. I like it when I think ahead, even when I don't know that I'm doing that. Arctic Gamer, good to see you. It's been great seeing you get into route building. I started making routes myself primarily because I was inspired by Out the Rail Yards over a decade. Well, thank you. I'm glad to have inspired your route building. And part of, and I talked about this in the Wisbech and Upwell review, that for a long time when I started making the video reviews, Rail Yard, I sort of felt like all of this work is so impressive and I could never do that. And then I finally decided I was going to do it, and it took me a long time, but I ended up doing it. And I'm really happy that I get to say I did it. I'm really happy that I succeeded in building a one-to-one route that then I could cover on my own show. That um, so it's very much a case of, the pixels are free. Go out and try it. Have fun doing it. Um, and just give yourself time. And recognize, especially if you're going to get into route building one to one. Part of why I've liked getting into these train layouts is I can finish one in the span of an evening if it's small enough. And even larger ones, it's still a bit more manageable size of a product. Really gives you a new perspective to do it yourself. Exactly. Okay, so I want to place. Now let's talk about those better than just talking about place some, which I also list for. Maybe I don't have those in the. But that's less important. One of the things I really liked when I started building the Wisbech and Upwell for Trainsy, I started in Trains a New Era, the previous the version of the game before this, and then I finished it in there, but I also ended up making a 19 version. And one of the things I really like 19 are these PBR textures with the three-dimensional fields that just really livened it up. That's gonna be a little tricky to give a scenic barrier. I like having. I don't want the grass growing in the. Fortunately, rain editing isn't fine enough to quite split. I know some of you watching me are going, you should be using Trains 22. You wouldn't run into this. And you are correct, but I am not ready to go into Trains. I am not there yet. So we are going to put up with a slightly messy edge. We're also going to use some tricks of the trade to kind of hide. But we at least have a field, a crop in there. And probably, I think I'm going to go with 3 fields. So we're going to have one here, and over. See what other things we have. And then we'll probably flesh out where the roads go on this side and so. Oh, perfect. I'm gonna put this one over here going. Actually, that blends pretty okay for that working. Oops. So, what are you guys up to modeling wise as far as your project? Had time work on whatever it is you are modeling. Be interested to know how you guys are getting on. I've been largely doing sim stuff, but I did get back into model railroading a little bit this month. I did some more work on my engine terminal module. It with fittingly enough ground textures, or I guess you would say ground coverage. Oh. So we've got our fields in here, and we will clean those up shortly. But I want to put the orchard in here to pick out. Oh, the hedgerows, right? That's a thing. So between the houses here where there aren't roads. We're gonna put here. It's gonna be our means of separating the property. Like interesting. Road straight. No, it's not. And then house in, and then that should fill that out nice. here. We'll put the thing I learned when building the Wisbech Upwell is that hedges separated everything. Yes, you had fences, but you also had tons of hedges. Oh, and here's off in this is the yeah. Now we'll move it so here, and we'll have a fence going here. And I want to make sure. Yep, I'm putting that on the right level. We're going to build ourselves a road here and a road over. And then I want to add some grass and some bushes to create a bit. Now, and bushes aren't in because we are in the month of March as of recording. Switched it to June, and that's going to help us hide the kind of rough seam between like so. And those are little big and little big. I'm probably gonna look. Oh, that changed the part of that. Interesting. I like the seasonal texture approach. I mean, that was one thing that for a long time Train Z didn't have seasonal textures, which was an auto mission. Given that even Microsoft Train Simulator had the ability to toggle seasons, it was strange that you could not do that in this game. But they eventually rectified that. And it's still a little bit not as straightforward as you want it to be, but it works enough. That is our separation, and then I'm also going to have a little bit more in the way here and here. Probably going to add some other for those 2 points. Well, actually pretty happy with how this is looking. As ooh, I wonder if but there wasn't an order here. I might just do another field here. Let me see. There's that field and this. There we go. Just a bit more variety that way. I'm liking how this is looking. For as narrow a sliver as we have to work with, I do feel like we are capturing the spirit of pretty well, actually. I think there's I feel like maybe we should have some cows grazing here or something. I mean, they were pretty much all fields in this area, but I want to add a little bit of cows. I'm going to put a few because it's not cows here. And then we'll put some bushes here. But I should say, if you want to enjoy the full Wisbech and Upwell Tramway, it is available. You can download it from the download station. I poured my heart and soul into it. You could do your own at the rail yard review of it. Give me your seal of approval, or have fun just playing with it. But that was I enjoyed. That was that was such a period of time. And I'll break down what that means after I lock in the track and adjust the height to make it not be level. The levitation is a bit distracting for me, and we're doing really well on time. I figured this would take about an hour, and in almost an hour. Let's see. Sorry, I'm catching up on your messages. So Arctic Gamer, huge selection. Oh, you're okay about textures and such. Rich, still working on your 24 by 80 N scale hollow core door layout. You call the Lone Valley branch. Hope that's going well for you. Jimmy, you're considering a T-track module. Portable Welsh layout. I like the sound of that. Mikey, interesting idea for layout. A plantation railroad and do something like sugarcane. Yes, yes, and that is coming. Um, we are going to do one. I'll tell you why in a minute. Um, Mostly use trains for model railroading now. Um, and then a so yes, okay. So I've got my tracks locked in. Now I'm going to adjust the height a little bit so that the track doesn't appear to be levitating in the air. Yeah, what? 4.29. Oh, a little too high. How about 0.22? There we are. Okay, that I can live with. Raise everything along the track to 0.22 so the track doesn't appear like it's hovering there. Or so. Okay, is there anything else I want to do with this before I add walls? And we've done pretty well time-wise. I might even do the dig holes, even though I said I wouldn't. Well, we'll do the staging. Got the staging. Is there anything else I want to? Oh, right. Trees for over. Line. That's good. There we are. Got some bushes over here to kind of block this way. And honestly, I mean, this part's supposed to be unscenic, but it seems to me that the advantage of adding scenery to this is just that way. A little bit more forgiveness if like, oh, okay, I'm looking out. But maybe they'll just here. Oop, that. And you're going, man, Nick. That's a pretty straightforward layout. Pretty simple. Shouldn't have more, but more is not always the merrier. And I feel like this is me kind of doing the big elements of scenery that you would have. But of course, you could have horse and cart. Of course, I would say that, and I would have to look. Yep, we can have horse and cart coming this way. Wonder if I could find a farmer that's gonna fit this landscape and not feel um, super American. I don't know. That's probably too American, but maybe he could be standing next to the horse, so it isn't like, why does this horse not have? There we are. I can dig that as a scene. But point is, you could add a lot of details. I mean, the barn here could have like sacks of flour next to it, well, not flour, but sacks of animal feed next to it, or something along those lines. And a lot of very tiny details that you could add to really fill this out. But I think I'm gonna switch to this view. Get rid of this. That makes me happy. That feels like a mini Boyce's Bridge. That track looks like I need to smooth it out a little bit, but pretty content with it. I do think that it is about, oh, I could fit more, I could do more. So it's about just letting a scene. And to me, this is a scene that I like that it's part of the loop. I like that you can just run trains through it continuously. You can stage meets. There's a good amount to be done with it. I like that. I'm gonna put some bushes at the far end, kind of scene block that as I go over here. Not familiar with the Milton Valley Railroad, Mikey. Sounds interesting. Uh, Companion series you could consider as a version of the railroad, but for user submitted routes. I you mean so you're suggesting that like I look at other people's routes on the stream? Um, if people'd like to see that, they can let me know. I enjoy building layouts on here. Although we are going to be doing a lot of play testing in the next couple of hours. Not with just with this, but also with Copperwort, which is coming up. Um, it's true though that the download station has a lot of routes, and frankly, a lot of them are not good, and so there is a value in being looking through them and saying, here's ones that are worth it. I would consider it, maybe, um, maybe. I mean, yeah, I would say if there's layouts, specifically train layouts. I do want to keep the theme to layouts as opposed to real world routes. Um, but if there are train layouts that you think would be interesting to cover here, I am amenable to that. Okay, is there anything else you guys can see before I get to adding the walls and doing some quick and easy scenery and stuff that I should be doing with this? Because I'm actually really happy with how this looks. I wasn't sure it would look right being so thin, but I actually am very happy with how that looks. Um, Let me know what you guys think. Uh, oh, hello, Thomas Paradis. Uh, Supposed to be a harbor bridge. No, this is Boyce's Bridge. This is the center, like the middle of the Wisbech and Upwell Tramway, which is where there was a small station here, as well as where trains would. This was the only place in which a northbound would meet a southbound. Despite there being other loops elsewhere, this was the only meeting. Okay, I'm gonna finish off. Oh, what do I want to do? Do I want? Maybe I'll just make the rest black for now. I think I'll finesse. We're just gonna do a quick and easy replacement of the ground texture, so we're not looking at all that grid. Place it with that. It looks like this. That really draws our attention to the main scene and yeah, like that. Maybe the other thing I'll do is I'll tidy up these edges by putting. I know what I want to put in there. I'm gonna lower the fascia a little bit. It's a bit too high, so I'm gonna unlock the fascia level, lower that down just so that's a bit more flush with the. So but yes, I got sidetracked to the person who said we should do some type of plantation. Yes, the reason I really want to do one is that last month I had the opportunity to go on a cruise to the Bahamas, thanks to the generosity of family members, and um, and as part of that, we went to the island of Eleuthera, um, and got to see ended up doing this. I'll save the stories for when we're actually doing it. But the point is, went to the Bahamas, got to see like the Bahamas and not just the touristy bits. And I thought I really like I this really gives me an itch to do something Caribbean. So I think that it's so easy to kind of focus on prototypes and focus on just what we know, and I like the idea of pushing myself with that. The key is finding a track plan to do. I might have one in mind, but yes, um, Caribbean is some type of plantation will be a thing because I want to do. I'm just gonna place these tops loose at the moment. It's gonna tidy up our edges a wee bit. Um, that way, then when we're playing, it makes it a little bit. Yeah. So, what do you guys think of a scene like that? That you would end up building something like this? Do you think do you want a little bit more going on? Do you want a little bit less? Always interested on what what speaks to people and what doesn't. I think that I mean, the wizard, I mean, I loved making it in Train Sim. There was something about it was a very good creative space. If you're any kind of artist or maker and you know what it's like to get in that space of a good project that just really satisfies you, it there's something that I will always treasure about having built the Wisbech Upwell Tramway. Um, that project makes makes me feel good, but it's also something that was really special, and it's honestly something that I'm looking. I'd love to get into a project that big, that's that meaningful, and I don't know what that looks like, but until I do, well, the secret project, kind of, the secret project does that for me. Um, that's also making. Hopefully, I'll be talk a little from that. So now we've tidied up the edges. So in the long run, I'm gonna put dig holes, um, all through. I'm gonna put dig holes here so you can actually, so it looks like the full layout. But this will do for now. Um, um, this gives us a sense of what this sliver of scenery looks like. I think we succeeded. I think that even without having a backdrop, it alludes to what lies beyond it. And obviously, if you wanted to put in a backdrop, then you could make it feel even more, even deeper. But this is good enough for now. So we're going to do a little bit of play testing with this. Obviously, not too terribly involved. But we're going to get ourselves set up with a passenger tram that is headed south. And we're going to have ourselves a freight tram that is headed. So I'm realizing I want to switch out some of these wagons because I do want a bunch of fruit wagons. But I actually want to show off some wagons that are going to tie in with today's sponsor, Rapido Trains. So we've got some fruit wagons here. I'm going to add some Great Northern fruit wagons. And then I want to add a couple of 7 planks. And a couple of 5 planks. And we are going to make sure that they are all of. There we go. So we've got some, basically what we have are some loaded, oh, and I should give myself some. So we'll put some of these out here. Okay, so I am very much a novice to freight wagons overall. Um, when it comes to wagons, as in UK wagons. But uh, part of why I'm trying to learn more about them is because I have not one but two Rapido J70s. You'll recall that when we did a live stream of the Wisbech and Upwell, and we built a small layout based on that. That we were talking about their tram pack, which they had announced for pre-order. And so I have two trams along with two coaches. I don't have any freight wagons, and that's going to change because these freight wagons that Rapido is producing, yeah, let's take a look at them now. Actually, now is a great time to take a look at what Rapido's got on offer. So we're going to start with these Great Northern Railway, and I need to bring up my notes because I will admit that I am still new to the nature. Maybe we'll start with the 5 planks and the 7 planks then. Okay, so these are 7 plank wagons, named because they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planks. So 7 plank wagons and 5 plank wagons would be for bulk items. These ones are London Northeastern. These are Great Eastern 7 plank wagons. And if we look here, we have the 5 plank variants. These are 3D renders that Rapido Trains UK provided. The detail on them looks stunning. I think that, and I could say that, I mean, you see these little rivets on the wheels. Even that, though this is a render, I'm telling you, that finished product is going to have those rivets because my tram packs have wheels with these little rivets on the wheels, and it's this nice little visual flourish that, even though I admit to not knowing a lot about UK stock, these are just so well held. And so we have the pre-1902 version and the post-1902 version of Great Eastern wagon. So if you have a Toby or the J70 tram and you're looking for freight stock, these are available for pre-order on Rapido Trains UK. So these are renders, and then here's an actual photo of the samples that they have in stock. So bring up there's specific diagram numbers of what these are, but basically the takeaway point is they are detailed. And you can learn more by visiting their website, Rapido Trains UK. Rapido Trains. I'd better get that right. It is linked in the description. But if you go to rapidotrains.co.uk, you will be able to see these and place your pre-orders. So then we have these. This I thought is so cool. So they have these Great Northern Railway 8-ton vans, which would haul a different variety of food commodities. This is the one that I picked out of the photos that they chose to share, that they shared with me. This is one that I plan on getting because you'll note it says to be returned to Wisbech for fruit traffic only. So this fits perfectly with a J70. And if we look here, we can see a bunch of the different schemes that they'll be available in for the Great Northern and the different kinds of commodities they'd haul. This one you've got meat. This one you've got explosives. So yay, getting yourself some Splody Boys. And here's some samples of these guys. So if you've never purchased anything from Rapido Trains UK, they are every bit as good as their Canadian counterparts. I love my J70 trams. The coaches that they did in the tram pack are gorgeous. If you could get yourself, if you love oddities, and the trams are certainly oddities, you might still be able to get that tram pack from a hobby dealer. But these cars are available for pre-order, so I encourage you to check those out. And thank you to Rapido's Trains UK for sponsoring. So with that said, I've got a super chat. Thank you, Jordan Freeman. Did you ask Adam Savage about drinking while filming Mythbusters? Yes, I did. I will tell you that story. And an Arctic gamer. I'm glad you like the Caribbean layout idea. Blah blah. You love your 7 plank wagons and RWS Baden. You agree that Rapido does great quality detail. They do. So we're gonna simulate running this layout with that to be released Rapido stock. So we've got these 12-ton vans, which are actually British Rail, so they're a little bit of an anomaly here. We'll just use the GNR ones. So we've got our GNR fruit vans here. Track. So what we're simulating here, and then we've got these open wagons. So what we're simulating is these are loaded fruit vans. We're taking fruit to market. We've got and then a bunch of empty coal wagons that are going out to be filled. So what we're going to do is simulate a piece of a day in the life where we have this meet between a freight and a passenger tram, and then we're going to do a little bit of switching by way of picking up these wagons and continue on our merry way. While I do that, I will gladly tell the story of having one of my heroes answer a question of mine on stream. So I'm guessing that most of you will be at least somewhat familiar with Mythbusters. Just wanted to make sure we're good. So, you'll be somewhat familiar with Mythbusters, and then you'll be familiar with Adam Savage, who was one of the Mythbusters. Adam has a YouTube channel called Tested, where he covers a lot of projects. He's very big into making film props and exploring film props. I love his stuff, but I particularly love his live channel, or his live streams, because he talks about being a freelancer, and since I am a freelancer, I love learning his perspective on freelancing. I mean, I love hearing him talk about Mythbusters, but I even more love him talking about freelancing and just his philosophy on life. Very interesting guy. So, yes, he did a live stream recently, and I asked him what it was like to test the myths on Mythbusters that involve drinking, such as whether it's more dangerous to drive drunk or drive while texting, or drive while talking on the phone versus driving drunk, and things like that. And he did answer it. So you can find that video on YouTube if you search Adam Savage Drunk Myths. It's a recently uploaded video, and so he says my name at the beginning of it. He does mispronounce my name, but it's okay because he said my name. I'll take it. It's if you're wondering, the last name is Ozarek. He pronounced it Ozarek, and I get it. Same spelling. Anyway, so here we are entering Boyce's Bridge with our freight train. And part of what makes the Wisbech at Upwell such a great candidate for modeling, regardless of whether you do an around-the-room layout, which is what we did the last time we talked about the WNU on the live show, or a cameo layout like we've got here. The thing that makes it such a good candidate for modeling in part is because the maximum speed on the tramway was 12 miles per hour. You are not going to be setting any land speed records with this. And so it's kind of I'm learning that if you're modeling, you don't have a lot of room, it's great to model something where trains would naturally be going at a slow speed anyway. Oh, Mikey, I'm glad you're also up for a Caribbean-themed sugar route. That's good to know. Next month is already spoken for, but maybe May. Maybe May's live stream will do that Caribbean. So, part of what I like about this plan and the idea of modeling Boyce's Bridge is that it You could run this with two people by way of having one person bring a train in. And then there's enough for two people, especially if you're switching out cars. So hypothetically, when your train gets in on one end, you would turn the power and then you would run it the other way. Because yes, you could keep your train going the same way, because some of these trams all pretty much look alike. But I think it's a nice touch to actually turn them around, and then it gives you a little bit more to do operation. So here we are coming in. And this is a nice scene. This is, to me, this is the heart of what this layout is about, is having a nice, quaint little... And I think this is what this layout is for. This layout is for a cute, bucolic scene, also cheap. The other thing that we should talk about with this plan, about what makes this layout great, is that switching layouts are great, but the more switches you have to buy, the more expensive it's going to be. And let's say you're on a budget, and let's face it, most of us are. This layout has a total of 4 switches. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is it. So even if you got yourself nice switches, like Pico switches, not going to break the bank. You also don't need a lot of rolling stock. Like you could run this with just 2 trams. You don't need, I mean, all that operated on this railroad until the days of the diesel were these. You don't need a wide variety of rolling stock. You don't need a ton of any of these. You don't need a ton of track. You don't need a ton of switches. Now, there's more track here, admittedly. So, okay, so this element, now you have 6 more switches for the staging. But again, I don't think you need... I'd say you could probably get away with just 2 more switches and just 1 runaround track. Don't think you need a 4-track yard for something this small. The only reason maybe you'd want to is if you just want storage space for a wide variety of wagons. But that would be about the extent of it. So now we're going to let the passenger tram get underway, and then we're going to switch, we're going to bring couple up these 4 wagons here, and then we'll take them out of sight. So this is cute. This is cute. I think this will make for a good modeling project, Josh, because it's not... I mean, and even with buildings, so you've got 5 buildings total, as I've modeled it, but you could probably get away with just 1. I mean, you could get away with 0 if you really wanted it, but I think buildings provide a little bit more interest, so I would have a few. It's a nice little slice of life. I think it's a nice... I think that the Wisbech and Upwell is a tricky... You would think that for a 6-mile tramway, it would be an easy thing to compress. But the challenge is there's a lot of interesting scenes within those 6 miles. And what of those do you choose that gives you sort of the quintessential experience? A lot of people, like, if you look for layouts that people have actually built in real world, a lot of people have done Outwell Village. And it's understandable because Outwell Village is an interesting scene, but it's got complex track geometry. I wouldn't want to do it personally for that reason. But something like this feels tangible. And you could do it in a smaller space. I mean, we've done it at basically full scale. This is pretty much the full size of it when you're talking about the siding. Just shrunk into a 12 by 11 foot space. But you could shorten this up so it was maybe half the size and have a little bit less runner. Probably fit in 6 feet. And that could be interesting. And even omit the staging if it was just a diorama. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. And yes, it doesn't have a lot going on operationally, but that's not the point. Anyway, we're gonna grab those wagons. We'll get underway. Thank you for the super chat, Jordan. You've got 2 videos on Adam's YouTube channel where you ask him his favorite smell. Does he think the controversy that is playing on a conveyor belt will end? Interesting. I'll have to look those up so I see where your name dropped. But glad to see a fellow tested member here. Adam is a great person. I try to channel. I try to channel some of his wisdom when talking with you guys. I know you mainly come here for the trains, and I'm all here for that. But I'm more than happy to give out life advice too if you're looking for it. Come for the model railroad and stay for the life changing. Let's go down to ground level. There's something so endlessly endearing about the trams. Actually, the thing that I was just thinking about and looking around for, which sometime I'll have to take photos of and show you guys, is that I have... So for my trams, I don't really have a proper layout for them yet, but the one thing I do have, which is good enough, is there's a company that makes these seams that are designed to fit into a box. So you buy a little bit of track, and you buy paper. So you're buying this kit that's basically just a PDF. You print it out on sheets of paper. You mount those sheets of paper to different thicknesses of other paper cardboard, and then you make buildings. And the result is this like 1 square foot layout. A really tiny thing. I can hold it in my hands, place the buildings, and it's a cute little cameo of a thing. Super portable. I enjoyed building that. Maybe sometime I'll have a bring that up. It's close to done. I have a couple of things to do with it before I feel fully comfortable sharing it. But yeah, I'm so glad that Josh commissioned this and gave us an excuse to come back to Wisbech, because I just think the Wisbech and Upwell, I would say it's underrated, and I think it is. I mean, I think that more people have come to learn about it because of Thomas the Tank Engine, which is great. But it's the kind of thing that I have 3 books on the subject. I read each cover to cover. There's something, I love railroads and railroad histories that really make me feel like I've gone to a different time and place, and there's just something very endearing about the WU. Not just because of the trams, although obviously they're a key element of the charm, but just this element of being in pastoral England and you very slow top speed, and just, yes, there's a timetable, but it different slice of life. All right, so now we are going to get underway, and so the way that I would imagine this was operated is that, as far as bringing empty cars back in, is that would be southbound train coming in and dropping those wagons off over here, and then the loads would be picked up over there. Cute little scene. And I should say that if you found the process of watching this unfold exciting, and you'd like my help with bringing your track plan to life, or maybe even designing a track plan for you, I do take commissions. You can learn more at greattrainlayouts.com, which is also where you can download the finished the finished routes as I release them. But you can also see the routes that I've done for commission, and I'd love to help you out. And you can contact me through there as well. That's what I meant. Jordan Freeman, shouldn't I be editing a heist video? Actually, not at the moment. I don't have any heist videos to edit right now. Hopefully soon I'll have another one, but at the moment, nope. I have other videos to be editing, but that's my day job. This is the evening time. This is what I do for fun. And so that is a very short, what, 20 minutes we spent doing that trip on the Wisbech and Upwell, and specifically going through Boyce's Bridge. It goes to show, like 20 minutes for just this. Which is to say, you don't need a lot of space to have a lot of operations, and you don't even necessarily need a lot of switches. And this is obviously something that you could Americanize. You could make it so that it's not a tramway, but it's just a regular right of way, and a lot of ways you could adapt this. But I think this is a good reminder that simplicity has its own beauty, and I think there's a lot that you can with that. So, up next, we're going to be play testing one of my personal favorite layouts that I've ever built, based on a personal layout that I saw in a magazine, Copper Wort. I'm going to be showing you one of the most unique layouts you've ever seen. If you've never seen this, you've never seen anything like this. So stay tuned here on Great Train Layouts Live. And we're back here on Great Train Layouts Live. And I am so thrilled to finally have a reason to showcase this route. This is something that I spent a good few months on in the mid 2022. actually available on greattrainlayouts.com for download today. So if you want to check it out, you can do that. And there's another reason you should go there. There's actually a link in the description for this. But are you ready to see it? If you've never seen it before, are you ready to see it? Here we go. This is Copper Wort. Ta-da! Actually, I should zoom out even more than this. But we're going to do a quick flyby. And then I'm going to really zoom out. This is one of the most insane layout track plans I have ever seen in my life, and made for a very interesting build. There was maybe a moment where I considered building it on stream, and then I thought, there is no way that I'm going to be able to finish this in a live stream. Let's talk about the plan, and then we're going to play with it. So, what makes Copper Wort interesting, unique? Well, to do that, first I'm going to have to hide the ceiling layer, because that's what's blocking our view. And we need that. So I'm going to block. Okay. So let us have a bird's eye view of Copper Wort. So Copper Wort is based on an actual brewery in the Midlands in England around the turn of the 20th century. This is all about switching the cars necessary for making beer, and anything contributing to that, including cars for making the wooden casks that the beer gets put into. We're going to go deep into the operations with this. But just to say for now, this is all about making beer. It's all about bringing in the commodities and hauling out the beer. So, this is a hexagonal layout designed by Peter Goss for displaying at shows. So ignore the fact that my hexagon in the middle looks a little wonky. I had to do that because of how the buildings worked out. But what you need to imagine is that each one of these sections is a trapezoid that is so much of the UK scene is about layouts that you could take to shows. And so this is a layout that Peter built for the purpose of being able to take to shows. And you can actually find videos of the real one on YouTube, and you should definitely look up videos of the real one, because it's a beautiful layout. So I first saw it in Railway Modeler 2022. I fell in love with it instantly, and I wanted that layout. Like, that's probably one of the top layouts I've ever immediately seen that I just fell head over heels in. So, designed for showing at layout. So each one of these trapezoids, so this middle section in real life would be hollow. I'm using it to hide buildings, but this would be hollow. The operator stands in the center, and then you have each of these as a table section. It is insane how much we have here. And I think if we pull up the map, we could, so if we pull up the map, we could see that we have, actually, I should probably pull it up on my side panel, because then I'll be able to explain it a little bit more. So what do we, because we have a lot going on here. This is intense. So these buildings over here are for the maltings. And please don't ask me to explain every element of the process of making beer, because I am not qualified to do so. I don't even consume it. But this is the malt house, where the maltings are. So the barley gets turned into malt through magic, and so the malt will then get moved to the brewery. So this is where the barley is brought in and gets turned into. If you know more about making beer, please comment and save me from myself. But I feel confident about that. So that so this track over here, which these wagons are on, is the malting siding. Then we have this nice little town scene where the railway cuts through this village, or city, I should say. The map labels this as High Street. Then this is the brewery, which has a track going inside as well as this loaded section outside with a bunch of different sidings. And we'll get to those sidings in a bit, but there's a whole rationale to them. Over here we have the ale and storehouse. So So whatever's being placed into storage goes onto this track over here. Then over here is where we have the coopers. This is where the barrels get made. Near track to us is the wash bank, and also where coal gets deposited for the powerhouse. And away from us is the steam cooperage, where the wood gets formed in barrels. So, yes, this is copper work. And the first thing you're probably thinking when you're looking at this layout, and what we're going to be exploring tonight with it, is, oh my gosh, Nick, this is cool, but why is there no staging yard? You've got all this industry that needs to be switched, which is a lot of industry. And you're telling me, oops, nope, we're not done. Sorry about that. You're telling me that this is the staging yard for the entire operation. Oh, hey, Matthew Harris, glad you could join us. So the way this is going to work is so different from your average model railroad, or at least North American model railroad. It is really cool. And the best way that I can describe it is that it's live staging. So unlike what we usually cover on the show, which is this idea that cars originate off-world in staging. They come into the scene to be loaded or unloaded. Basically anywhere where there's scenery on the layout. And then they go away back to staging. In the case of this, it's more like the cars are moved around. So we pretend that they go away, but it's more like they will go from an active area where they're being loaded or unloaded to a staging track where then they will later be moved into action in some capacity. So we're going to talk about, well, we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to play through it. And if you want to follow along at home, even if you don't have Train Z, go to greattrainlayouts.com. If you download the route, and actually the link's in the description for this specific layout. If you download this layout, it comes with an article that outlines how these operations work, including a spreadsheet. And in fact, I pulled that up on my second monitor. So that's what I'm going to be using to remind myself, because it has been a while since I've played with this. But we are going to be following the flow of operations on this. We're going to be doing so using our little switcher here. So we're starting the day out, and already we're starting out a little rough because we've got this coal wagon in the way. And do we need to move that coal wagon right away? I think not. So I'm following along a table. So again, unlike a lot of model railroads as well, that would operate by the principle of, well, you have one, you're bringing cars into the world, and you can kind of do it in whatever order you want. This has a very regimented, this car goes here, then these cars go here. There is a whole process by which we are going to run this step by. And you might say, well, Nick, that seems a little restrictive. And maybe for you it would be, and that's, I've done the wrong thing. And that is totally fine. But I find this to be such an interesting, different way of operating, and I want to share that with you guys. I don't know if we'll get through the whole program, because it is involved, but we are going to get through as much as we can in the next, probably hour and a half. Hopefully you see something in this that you go, well, I learned something, and that is cool. And it is so unique as well of the layout, in part because it's a unique kind of industry. I think the challenge with a lot of industries with railroading, let alone modeling them, is that they really are a case of just there's something coming in and then it goes out. But there's not a lot of industries per se where you have internal switching. There's certainly some. You have automotive, but automotive, steel, but then you get run into issues of space, and so it's something that you don't see frequently in model railroading, is this idea of, especially not something where you basically have no staging because everything originates and terminates within the context of the layout. So now we're just replacing this little coal wagon back to its spot in front of the shed. Our first task is we need to get a bunch of casks, or wooden barrels essentially, move them from washbank coaling to inside the brewery. And I know that that means we are going to be picking up this car out of cars here, and we need to move them in there. Let's go about doing that. And again, I wish to emphasize, if you look at this and you're like, I want to play with this, the good news is that you can. This layout is already available on... Only problem with trains is sometimes clicking on the wrong thing. Available on greattrainlayouts.com. And the link is right in the description. And I had so much fun building. You could tell this is one where I really fell in love with it, and I really went to town on the scales of it. Just because I loved it so much. This is a layout that I saw and I thought, if I could buy this layout, I would. This is on par with the Virginian. Like, the Virginian's another layout, which we've covered on a live stream last year. Like, if I could own it, I probably would. And this is one too. The artistry of it is amazing. The design of it is incredible. It's such a unique thing, and it's portable. Like, one of the things I love about the British model railway scene is that there's this culture around the idea of you build your own personal layout and you take that to a show. And I would love to see that crossover more to the U.S. because a lot of those small layouts with operations, because a lot of the times when I go to train shows and they have portable layouts, and this isn't meant to be dismissive, but it's to say that it's a lot of, the big club layouts with the multi-track train going in a circle, or maybe a small 3x6 layout with the train going in a circle. And, obviously those can be very, very well done and very pretty to present. And so I don't mean to sound dismissive or condescending to them, but I'm an ops guy. I like when there's a purpose to what's being moved, and so much of what the Brits do, they are having these layouts that, even though they're really small, are very intentionally designed with operations in mind. And this one, as far as dimensions, so this is obviously, well, I should say obviously, this is 00 scale, and it's about, I'd say, 8 feet. I mean, depending on how you define it, you're looking at basically an 8-foot diameter for this, from its farthest points. Isn't that so funny to say, too, like a diameter for a train layout? I should probably open my window to see what you guys are saying. Matthew Harris, you bought yourself a switcher? Nice, Mikey. Something to note with breweries, preferred coal or coke, very low sulfur, possible to sulfur spoiling the beer with foul taste. Interesting. Makes perfect sense to me, though. But yeah, this is, I could gush about it all day. So I'll gush about it for another hour. But yes, this was a case of, and why I still love, I love modeling magazines, is because you can find some really great ideas. And So this was Railway Modeler, and honestly, I love Railway Modeler magazine. It is a great publication that Pico puts out, and if if you want to change of pace, I recommend you check it out. And you could get digital subscription. Like you could get a 3 month. Here's what's cool: you could get a 3 month digital subscription and get access to their entire archive, which goes back 60 or 70 years. And it's all digital and it's all scanned. I've I have added a lot of layouts to my to-do list from going through the back issues of Railway Modeler. But yes, I love that publication. I saw this layout and it was oh, I put it in storage, right? I was gonna get the cover of it. I don't have it. But it was love at first sight. I saw the photos and I thought this layout is amazing and insanely cool and just insanely unique. I mean, I've thought long and hard about how could you do this with something like a steel mill, um, because I think it would be interesting to try to do an American version of this, and maybe you could do an American version of a brewery and keep the ideas the same. Part of the challenge too with Americanizing this is just all of these tight radiuses. I mean, I think it comes out to about 18 inches. I mean, the track geometry too. There's some challenges with building this, but there's immense rewards as well, and that you have. This is just so unique. You take this to a trade show, people are gonna be like, "This is unlike anything else." It just stands out so much as a design. I really hope I get to see it in person someday. Who knows when I'll next be in the UK, let alone being in the UK while this is at a show. Okay, so that takes care of the cast. So next up, we are going to be picking up. Give you a better view than that. We're going to be picking up casks from the steam cooperage and taking them to Washbank Coaling. So basically, we're going to be picking up these cars right here and taking them to that spot over there. So the idea is that basically we've taken these barrels that are ready to be loaded with beer, and we've put them into the brewery so that they can be loaded. Meanwhile, we are moving these cars to be prepared for treatment, to then be moved over into the brewery. It's kind of a... So this is the living staging element, because they could be taken over now, but we don't have room for them, so we're just moving them elsewhere. And by way of doing that, we're also creating future room for for empties to be brought in, which will then be loaded. And did I? Nope, I forgot to change this. I don't think that'll matter too much. Another thing that this plan reveals, kind of in general, about if you chose to model UK rolling stock, is that some UK rolling stock, as seen here, and as we saw with the wagons from Rapido that we were looking at, is really, really short. So you could get away with pretty intense, tight radii for curves, and not have to worry about whether your train can make it. So an example of that being, I have the Wisbech Upwell Tram Pack that Rapido brought out, and I can run that. And those are passenger cars that are about, I guess you'd say maybe 30 feet long in real life, thereabouts. And I can run that tram set on my Greenfield Village layout with its minimum 11-inch radius curve. And these cars, be no sweat. So if space is an issue, having really, really teeny, tiny rolling stock can definitely play to your advantage. Okay, so we've moved those cars. Next up, we are going to grab. Nope, we're not going to grab the coal. The coal does not move. So instead, we're going to move more casks from the brewery bank over to the ale storage and bottling. So brewery bank is 8, and then we go to 4, which means okay. So that means we are going to go pick up these cars over here, and we are moving them over here. No, over here. Means I need to grab them, and then I need to run around them. A couple of ways I can get there. We'll go this way. Bitch. And this is the type of thing where even if you didn't want to do something as insane as this of a design, you could still just take a piece of this, and rather than having it all on curves as it is here, you could make it work on a straight section. But yeah, this is I had a lot of fun building this, and I did go kind of crazy. But it was fun. This was some layouts I have that feeling. Some I feel like okay, this is solid. This is ready for release. Others, oh, I want this to look absolutely breathtaking. Some of it too is what I think I will actually play with after the fact. And admittedly, this is one that I have played. I've talked a lot before about how there's layouts that I built thinking that I was going to get into playing, and then I realized that really what I love is the building. And that's still true, but there are layouts that I will occasionally. So this is one. Because it's just, it is a fun little switching puzzle thing. And if you two want to play, again, you can download it, and it has the article that explains all of this, so you can read along and figure out, do exactly what I'm doing. And if it's not quite clear, then you can tune back into this live stream as a replay, and then you'll be able to follow along at home, at least for the first little bit, and you can kind of see how it all works. So these cars are getting moved in storage. And where are they going to go from here? Back to the brewery, I think. I think once they go to the storage, then we'll run them around before we bring them back to the... Just to show a little bit of what I mean by this idea of being disappeared. Keep clicking on thing. Okay. Back. And make sure that switch is set. Appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. I know that this is a lot of British stuff, and my British viewers are probably asleep during this being live. So those of you who are tuning in are probably tuning in from the U.S., and I'm glad that you find this interesting. Okay, so those are moved, and then I need to grab that coal car doesn't move. I need to move the fourth set of casks from the Half Moon siding to the brewery bank. So, in this case, we're representing empty cars that are about to get loaded. I'm gonna move them in, and I'm gonna make sure they're all set. Like that. This is where you could really enjoy your DCC equipped locomotives. Being able to have all that sounds that they provide as they're going along and switching. Do a little bit of a ground view here. This will be an easy one. For once, I don't actually have to run around the cars. I'm just going to have to move them into position. After which, I'm moving... No, I'm not moving cars yet. But the storage cars moving from... So I need to grab cards from the storage inner siding, which is 15, which is... one of the few storage tracks I actually have in staging. Grabbing those cars, so I'll probably go... Yeah, we'll go the other way. A little too fast. Down the speed. I will... But actually, I want this switch to be cleared, so I can back, place, left. And I need to Worts. Okay. That's not that way. Push that back. But we'll use this as an excuse to see another part of the layout since we've spent so much on this half. It's true both in real life as it is with modeling. I think industrial railroads in general, partially because they're just so secluded and underdocumented in a lot of cases. They get underrepresented, which is too bad because they're just part of, I think, what grabbed me about this layout. I mean, you want to talk about a layout, like what makes this layout great. This layout just oozes atmosphere. I feel like I'm here, and I like that it's so... It draws you in. There's the scenery, the design of it, it just, you look at it and you go, what is that? And this scene being chief among them. This is basically, I mean, this is a very, I love scenes like this where the train just kind of peeks in and peeks out, as it's about to do in a moment. Like, and even the way here that it kind of dips between these buildings. Like, it really feels like the railroad is squeezed into this tight space, and I love it. It has so much ambience because of the way things are just so tightly constructed. Going past the Maltings building here, we are going to collect the only cars that are actually in storage. physics. Where's my... Does it have a switch? There have a switch. Switch. Another question. Oh, I have to hover over here. Can't see it. Yep, I'm gonna change that out more easily. There is a shortcut I could be using to change that switch. Getting gonna make my life easier. Oh, now can't see. Okay, well, at least I remembered the shortcut. So I'm gonna collect these two cars, and they're gonna go to a siding. And part of you, so as far as how insane did I go with the modeling on this? I mentioned, you may have caught it earlier, I mentioned that this whole background shape is a custom object. I made this. It is a solid 3D object. And I even emulated the art style of the original backdrop. All these stacks and things, that is way too much time spent in Illustrator. Oh, this is I love, like, all the part of, I think what really is effective with the design of this layout, aside from the track itself, which of course is impressive, is there's all of these places. I'm going to pause so I can talk about this properly. There's all of these places where you're looking through buildings. You're having to look into the scene. The only case where you're not is over here, which is a nice contrast, but you have all these little places like here, over here with the street, where you're peeking down. It's really narrowing your view, which makes the whole thing seem larger by comparison. And that's something you could do on any layout that is thinking about how do I narrow the perspective. Harder to do with a layout like what we were building earlier with the Wisbech Upwell Tramway, but not possible there, as you saw even with trees. Certain layout elements are going to lend themselves more easily. So these cars are going to staging. Or not staging, they're going to this siding. And then we're going to do an inspection trip with that passenger car that we saw in the staging area. So this is meant to represent the owners of the brewery are going to go out for a inspection trip. And you're like, man, Nick, you've already done a lot of operations. Well, that is one. So the layout goes through four rounds, or to simulate like the full session. It goes through 4 separate rounds, and each round is separated by one of these inspection trips. Yes. And so we've just completed one of those rounds. So I don't know if we'll get through all 4, because I'm probably going to wrap this up at 10. But you'll get to see a good amount of the operations in action. Ron, good to see you, Ron. This really has a nice mini scenes and enough operating interest. I mean, it does. It does. And this is a layout that lends itself so well to the concept of try to throw that switch, and I'm going to go down the wrong one. Maybe I can forward. There we go. Okay. Why the switches back here don't want to work in the way that the other ones do. Go figure. But, yes, it lends itself. You could probably even figure out how to make 2 people run it at a time. You'd have to be very careful about. Oops, I didn't want to switch that. Oh well, I'll switch that. About how to do that, but I mean, even just giving one person these tasks. This is a layout where, yeah, you're not going to have a lot of other operators with you, but there's so much detail and it's so tight, you're not going to really feel like you're running alone. Like, you feel like, I mean, just the amount of people figures and the amount of buildings, you feel like you're in the heart of this. And especially if you had speakers that had the industrial sound effects off, this would be, I don't know if Pete did that with his layout, speakers with sound effects, but I think I need to back up because otherwise I'm not going to be able to go where I... Nope, actually the switches want to go. That's good. But yes, this has a lot of atmosphere to it, just by the way it's been designed. And again, if you want to see what the actual layout looks like, there are a couple of, at least a couple of videos on YouTube you can check out, and I totally encourage you to do so. It is so beautiful. Okay, so now we're doing our inspection trip. We're going for a loop around the layout, and then we're going to bring our car back. So we'll choose some nice scenes to just camp out at and watch our train go by. I'll admit, I've been saving this, sharing this layout with you guys for a rainy day, because I knew I wanted to do it. But I knew that I didn't want to do a stream just about this layout. And so getting to partner with Repeater Trains on this, and getting to... splitting it with the Wisbech Upwell build proved to be just the right opportunity. Part of what I hope you get out of watching this is just that I would have assumed before this layout existed that if you wanted operations with switching, you needed staging. And this has me thinking about alternatives, how you would create a sense of operations and maximize your scenic space with a very, very minimum of actual staging. Just by nature of how you... It's a very different way of operating, because now there's a specific choreography to where you're moving cars and such, but I think it's an interesting thing to explore. Alright, we've completed our inspection trip, so we're going to move that coach back. Which I did, and it did move. There, and then I have to see what's next. Alright, so those cars inside the brewery are now going to go to the half-moon lawn siding. So basically what we're going to simulate now is where we're pretending the cars are going out of world. So in reality, they're going from one location in the visible world to another location in the visible world, but we want to pretend that we're actually transporting them elsewhere. So first thing is to go back to the brewery and make sure my switches are... Well, do I want to go in that way, or do I want to... Actually, that's... No, I could go that way. Yep, I can do it. So we're gonna make sure that yep, everything's good. We're gonna bring our engine around. Switch But I would, even if you don't think, as far as railway modeler in the British scene, I would say even if you don't think you're interested in British prototype modeling, I would encourage you to check it out and subscribe to one of those magazines, even just for a short while, because there's a lot of interesting elements to layout design there that you don't see in the US. Which isn't to say it's better or worse, but it's to say that it gives you different ideas. There's one layout which, I'm looking for an excuse to share that one with you guys. I'm not sure what that is yet, but there's another layout that I've completed and hope to share with you someday that similarly has a trick up its sleeve that I've never seen done anywhere else with any other layout. And I found it in an old Railway Modeler magazine. Alright, so we're grabbing these loaded cars, which are they going to go to the... Yep. Yes, so we're simulating these cars going outside of the world. Well, actually, technically, we're probably simulating these cars being empty. Those would be the loaded cars. So we'll just take them straight to the Half Moon Long side, which is 11, which is there. Oh, okay. We're gonna take them to this siding over here, which means I'm going to all the way back there. Then I don't have to. So I can still and make sure the track is that so I can drop off my cars there. So we're pretending that these cars would be empty, and we could have emptied them, or we could change them in settings, but for the sake of time, we're just going to move them over there. But it would also be pretty easy from a model railroading standpoint to make these barrels all like one solid load. So you just take that on and off the cars to simulate when something is loaded on load. Although admittedly a little tricky to do in that building, but you can find a way. If you're a model railroader, by virtue of being a model railroader, you're already creative. Oh, thank you for the... Oh, hey, Audi, glad you could join us. And thank you for the super chat, Pacific Productions. I was rewatching some old At the Railyard videos, and I saw a video called MSTS Multiplayer in the Seligman sub. How did you do multiplayer on MSTS? Isn't it only single player? Good question. So, that's a very old video. Kudos to you for looking so far back. I will answer that as soon as I know what cars I'm moving next. I need to grab the cast cars from the wash bank, pulling and move them. Okay, so now we've got another round of cars that are going inside the brewery. So we're simulating more barrels that are ready to be loaded with beer. And so those cars are there. Okay, so while we're getting that, and then we're going to run around and move them in. and I should probably provide an overview as well. As just so, what are all these cars we're removing? Well, we have 4 cask trains, which basically means these are cars that are hauling either empty casks or loaded casks with beer. We've got a couple of coal cars, which are either providing coal for the power for the brewery or coal for our steam locomotive. We have covered vans with maltings, which we have not touched yet, but we're going to touch this go round. And we have, I guess what you could call like general equipment cars, which are these ones right here. And then the inspection. That's all that we're moving around. And I think we're going to run around here. So, now to answer your question about MSTS multiplayer. So back in 2010, I was part of a group which was called the initially Virtual Railroaders Multiplayer Association, and then became the Virtual Operators Railroad. So, VORA. And you are correct, MSTS was a single player only platform. So what we did is you would have each player on their own copy of MSTS using TeamSpeak to communicate with everybody else and just pretending that the signals were changing color, pretending you could see another train. Was it rudimentary? Absolutely. But keep in mind, this was before Run 8 existed, so there were no multiplayer train sims at that time. Period. So, in the spirit of better than nothing, we made do, and we really made do. Part of how we made do is we as you could hear in that video, we really wanted the sessions to feel real, and so we ran those sessions by the book. I mean, these were ultra realistic, to the extent that one of our rules was that there was no chatter. Everything was a radio communication. It had to be prototypical. It had to be prototypical to the extent that we even would run practice sessions during the week, so that we would have which would be like a shortened 2 or 3 hour session to just practice calling the signals out in a realistic manner. So, even though you couldn't see the other train, those sessions were fun. I miss those days, although obviously now we have simulators like Railroads Online and Railroader and Run 8, which do have true multiplayer, and are really fun games in their own right. I'd say of those, currently my favorite being Railroader. So that is how that worked. The video's outdated, and in some ways I should take it down because it's not really relevant to anything going on, but it's a fun novelty, and I put work into it, so hence why I leave it up there. So thank you for the super chat, Pacific Productions, and I hope that answers your question. Yeah, as if you couldn't tell, I already love ops, but spoiler alert, I love ops. And that is not a recent phenomenon. I think for me, what I love about it is that sense of immersion, that I can pretend for a moment that I'm railroading for real. And that I get to try so many different things, especially with the train sim side of it. And I belong to a really nice group of, a Discord server with a really nice group of people, with Railroader, and I enjoy playing that game with those guys. And even though those sessions aren't as strict realism as we were with Mora, it's its own kind of fun. It's great now that we do have these sims where you can see the other train, and especially Railroader, because I love Steam. So yes. Hopefully that answers your question. And you say, I figured that was the case, but interesting. It felt like a real railroad operation, right down to the job orders. You would have loved that. Yeah. Yes, well, and you know, the key is now to find a group of folks that you can emulate that with. Because now, with especially with something like running, there are so many tools out there to be um, run as prototypically as you want. Okay, our next cut, we're moving these cars from ale storage bottling to the steam cooperage, which is make sure I get the right one. Two. We're moving these cars over here. So at this point, we're pretending that they are empty and that we would be going to load more barrels. Good. But yay for not having to run around this cut of cars. This cut is good to go. But this is part of the genius of this is that yes, there's this choreographed routine that I'm following essentially of okay, I need to move these cars and then I need to move these cars. Um, so there's a very strict order. I can't decide, oh, I want to move this cut and then this cut because there's only so much room for storing things. But for me, that doesn't take away. I mean, it does make it very linear of an operation, although I imagine you could probably come up with a few alternative um, choreographies. But it's fun for what? A fun little program. So next month, I guess I could tell you guys what we've got in store for next month. So I meant to do that. So what are we doing next month? Well, next month, speaking of going back to things, we are going to be going back to the Virginian River. And the reason we're going back is kind of similar to why we came back to Wisbech. So we is because the commission. So Jay contacted me and really loves Model Railroader's Virginia track plan and wants help in fitting it into a differently configured space. And rather than having it being a 4x8 loop, he wants it to be a point-to-point layout that's more in the shape of an E with the branches. Gonna be an interesting challenge. I actually have to design that one as well as build it. So I'm gonna be off stream working on the design, and then on stream building the plan. That's gonna be a fun one to share with you guys. Look forward to being able to do that. And Virginian is also up there on favorite track plan time, and something that's really small but packs a ton of operations in space. Okay, now we're moving. Oh, speaking of those cars we just ran into, we are moving those to the Half Moon Outer Bank, which is going to be okay. Moving them there. So this cut, we are pretending, is loaded. So we're going to pretend that it's loaded, it's going to go out of world, and then we're bringing it back into the world, and it'll be basically in storage until it gets loaded again. So rather than, ultimately these cars are just going to go here, but rather than only moving them there, we are just going to go for a nice trip out of world and then back into world. I'm also going to make sure that all the correctly, because that's right. Got one of my favorite things here. This is another case, kind of like with Wisbech, where because of the tight turns and the industrial theme, it lends itself to these slow speeds and really fits nicely. Um, Gives you an excuse for elongating. I also love track running through brick cobblestone. This is a vibe. Like this scene right here is very much a vibe. Jimmy, that's what buffers are for. Yep, you got it. You got it. And Pacific. I also saw your two lead locomotives. There's 777, 767. Yes, you caught the reference correctly. That is very much an unstoppable reference. Okay, so we are bringing these into the outer loop, and then once that is done, I am going to move. Oh, and then we have to go get the Maltings vans. They get to be moved to inside. Wait, how do they get? I guess we're moving a lot of cars to inside the brewery. I didn't realize I had that many in at once. I guess I have room for that. Better have room for that. I need to fit 2 cuts of cars in there. But I think I know what I'm doing. So, we're now going to fetch the malting. Sorry if I'm making you guys dizzy by clicking on so many things. There's a lot of stuff in a very small amount of space, and Trainsy frequently misinterprets what I'm trying to click on. That is what I was doing. There. Here, there, and that will come. Okay, off we go. Ready. So we're talking about things to cover in the future. Could definitely do a Caribbean inspired layout. Are there other things you guys would like to see as far as railroads or type of layout? I am all ears on. And how much do you like watching the playtesting? I know this has been a very playtest. And I like doing this, but I want to make sure you, even if you're watching this after the stream, let me know in the comments. I need some water. And yes, I saw your comment earlier, Jimmy, about you thinking this is pickle juice. I can understand why you think. And here we are with the maltings. So now these are going to go inside the brew. I have to make sure that switch is changed. And of course I clicked on something. Not that switch. That, and that. Okay, we are good. Going through town again. I love it. I feel like part of what I love about this layout is just that there's not a bad angle to shoot it from. And I don't mean with screenshots and praising myself. I mean in terms of what I've seen of the real layout. There's so many different angles to photograph it from, and it's just so gosh darn. So, these cars need to go in, but I also know that I'm going to need to pull these cars out before I pull these ones out. So I'm going to stop here and pull those ones out first, couple them onto the malting cars, and then push all of them in. Pacific, yeah, you like watching the playtest. It's nice to watch these streams with them. Well, I appreciate you tuning in and word of them. Now, this is a fun little switch. I encourage you, if you've got Trains 19 or 22, I encourage you to download this. Because it is free, and it is available now. I know a lot of times I'm talking about routes where it's like, oh, you have to get it on, wait for a while, and then it gets free. No, this is available now. The other thing I should say, too, speaking of routes being released, that on Patreon, I just released the Reading and Northern train layout. So if you like the streams, you like the podcast, you want to support me, you can go over to Patreon. And for as little as $1 a month, you're getting early access to the trains layouts. The Reading Northern layout that we built last fall is there. And on greattrainlayouts.com, which is where all the routes end up eventually, I just released the Reading Railroad Pond Creek branch that we built last summer. And it isn't out as of me saying these words, but if you're watching this on repeat, it should be out. The Fonda, Johnstown, and Gloversville Bredalbin layout that I built last spring. I don't know how that's up my radar to release it publicly, but that will be out on greattrainlayouts.com. You can download it. The layout, which interestingly was, for a long time, the layout I was building in real life. And finished most of it until I ended up moving and not having room for it. And then switched to the prototypes I'm doing now with Greenfield Village and Engine. Hey Rick, you enjoy watching the ops sessions and then enjoying these British layouts and looking forward to the Virginia. Yeah, oh, as if I needed an excuse to go back to the Virginian. The Virginian is top 10. Like, this is top 10 design. Virginian is top 10. I love that one so much. So as folks know, I'll probably mention this next time too, but Trains Magazine, Model Railroader, the whole Kalmbach got bought out by Fire Crown Media, and I checked with people that I know there after I made sure that they were okay and their jobs were okay. Be clear, I wanted to make sure that they were all right. But then I asked about, which they were, and they're still employed there. But I wanted to ask them about, see if the Virginian layout survived the move, and they said yes. That the only layout that was torn down was the big Milwaukee, Racine, and Troy, but the small project layouts have been saved and moved elsewhere. So if you're a fan of those layouts, they still exist. So that was nice. So that Virginia layout, work of art and just brilliant track. Okay, what am I doing now? I've moved a cut-off cars in. Now I need to move. I know I'm moving these cars here. I need to move them to the storage inner siding, which is 15. Oh, I'm going to take them back out to staging, essentially. All right. Which also means I'm going to have to get those moved. So I'm all the way back here. In, grab onto these, and then push them out. And then we get to do another inspection. Which is convenient, because we'll be right there anyway. I'm getting that set up for whenever I'm back. That's right. I mean, here we are. We've been playing with this layout a little over an hour, and we're less than halfway through the full program of it. To talk about a layout with operating potential. There's just so much in such a little space. And it would be interesting, admittedly, to do this in a more conventional format where you'd have it all straight and you'd have actual station yards. It would be kind of interesting. I needed this one. I did not. But that's okay. So we're going to put ourselves in a position. If you're a steam locomotive engineer fireman, you're probably looking at this and going, man, why is that engineer or keeping the cylinder cocks open all the time? The answer is because I don't have any control over it. That's how this particular locomotive. I'm gonna temporarily move these cars. Okay. Because I need to grab these two. I can place them back. Switches should be set because that's where we came from. Hey Dan, Sir Liv says, love Copperwort. Been wanting to build something inspired by it in Railworks. Are you familiar with the Trinity Dock Street Bridge layout? Very similar compact industrial field. Yes, very familiar with that one too. It has also crossed my mind for a layout. There's some. I feel like that would be very tricky because it's got some funky turntables, and it's not clear how to run that one. But yes, as an art project kind of a layout. And as you guys know from past streams, I love dock layouts. We built that Penty inspired dock layout last summer. Built it with Broadway series. Yes, docks are also safely in our future. So these cars are getting put back into storage, and then we're going to take another loop with the inspection van. One wonders if certain libations are being consumed. Inspection van, since these libations are made. Sure. Yeah, there we go. Couple. And this inspection wagon idea, kind of a nice touch too, because that's the type of thing where even if you model something that's freight, probably find an excuse to, even if you couldn't, your track geometry doesn't allow for coaches, maybe to at least have an inspection caboose or something that people use to look at the property. Nice way of building a kind of a cheat code of adding in a little extra operation. Sir Liv, biggest issue I've seen with Trinity Dock is there is no 100% accurate track plans online, only dark photos, so getting those multiple curving crossings right would be tricky. Yeah, that and just the buildings are very specific too. So one of the things when I was building this in Trinity, initially I'd hoped to actually have the actual buildings. So the Pete Goss, who made this track plan, has published the drawings to the brewery and the associated buildings. So it would be possible to 3D model them and put the actual buildings in. And for a while, it seemed like I was going to be able to work with somebody who could help do that, but then they backed out. Um, and so, but fortunately, I found these buildings that are, I think they're by Euro Modeler. They're close enough in look that they kind of, they're close enough in look that it seemed they seemed cohesive was the thing. Like they look like they belong together. So, and I was able to make them fit enough. I mean, you can tell where they've kind of spilled onto the fascia, but I made them fit enough um, to make them work for this. But that one, yeah, there's some tricky elements to it as far as making it look right. Oh, just notice this layout is a hexagon, which of course we all know are the besticons. Sure, we'll go with that. Yeah, it's, well, and here's the thing, in case you missed it earlier. The layout itself is a hexagon, but it's also that each one of these trapezoids, in real life, mind you, not in the sim, but in real life, each one of these trapezoids is a separate table. So that it comes apart into 6 sections, which can then be transported between shows, which bonkers. Amazing, but bonkers. Alright, so we're dropping this off. Hey, Riso, if the hexagon is the best of what is the worst of I don't have a good answer for that. Maybe somebody in the comments could be more creative. Alright, so we are a nice stopping point of things, but we haven't touched those coal wagons, so maybe we'll do one more go round of things before we call it a night, just so that we can move those coal cars in, and then we'll call it. Parking our coach. Because this time we're going to get to do... Yep, we'll get to move a couple of the coal wagons. That gives us a little variety, and then we'll probably pause it. Because I could go through the whole program of things, but I will have felt good about the amount I've done. So next I need to go and get one of the cast cuts from the bone something. 11 to 5. Oh, interesting. Okay, I can do that. Connected to that. So next up, we are going. I need to grab these cars and move them over here. That is right. Yes. That's going to be very crowded initially, and then I'm going to have to move something else. Oh, perfect. Okay. We're going to grab these cars and these cars to move these cars over here. And then I need to grab the cars that are inside the elsewhere. Hopefully you watch this, and even if you don't think, man, I'm going to build that way, you see the merits of modeling British stuff, because I am a huge fan of micro layouts. I'm a huge fan of the idea of really small, compact layouts. And the beauty of modeling a lot of British prototypes is they're rolling stock. Small, 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 teeny, weeny, weeny. The ability to have wagons, have a bunch of wagons in a small space. Wagons that can fit around technically curves. Which again leads me to thanking today's sponsor, Rapido Trains UK. And I encourage you to check out their website and see some of the products they have on order, because the wagons may be small, but they are not lacking in detail. And their work is gorgeous. I really love my tram and my tram kit with the coaches. Beautiful stuff. Okay, so we've got all of that setting up the outer bank. Next up, we are grabbing these cars, which we are pretending are empty, from inside, and we are moving them to over here. Means I'm going to have to run around. And then we get to start moving some coal cars. They haven't moved at all. And just to show how crazy, some of this isn't my doing, but even the buildings come with some detail. I could probably detail that even more if I wanted to. Yeah, sometimes it's nice to just call a project done. Even if there's more that can be done to it or with it, it's nice to just say, you know what, I'm calling that done. It looks like I have some elements in, but I have something blocking my view of it. Let us take a look. Okay. Ron, basketball game I'll be dropping off. Well, thank you for joining, Ron. Jimmy, you would say gondolas. Hooked over in a ditch. I guess that's a type of bond. Points for creativity. Riso, you want to live on this layout? Nope, that is not. We're not ready to move. Actually, I don't think they. It is not weird you want to live on this layout. I feel similarly. Like for me, I could, if we're. I could live on High Street over here. Like, let's assume like there's like a, apartment or something like that. I could live here very easily, or maybe in the signal box, or part of the signal box. And yes, this is a layout that is. This is a layout that I cannot emphasize how much it oozes atmosphere, and I encourage you to find videos on YouTube. It really is a whole other level of something that just feels like a real place, and it is based on a real brewery and industrial railroad to support that brewery. So there is a prototype for it, but there is just something it feels like you should be running this in a thick fog. It's very, very atmospheric. I don't think I could ever be convinced to. There's certain layouts I see, like the Virginian is one I've looked at and thought, okay, I could see building that someday. I mean, I could just make my own of it. Um, I could see doing that. I actually contemplated doing that in N scale because you could do what's a 4x8 in essentially 2x4. That's interesting in its own right. So that's what I've thought of doing on my own. But I look at the track geometry of this with, you know, all these turnouts and crossovers, and I'm sure he had to custom lay the track. I'm looking at that and going, ah, I don't need it that much. Like, yeah, if you ever wanted to sell it someday, I mean, Lord knows what it would cost to ship a layout over to the US. Oh, that's an uncomfortable thought. But, it's the type of layout I could see fine. It's not one I'd ever see building. Never say never, but the whole having to build out and track like that just does not feel like a thing that I would. Not my slice of modeling. If it's yours, more power to you. Oh well, thank you, Architect Kramer. I'm glad that you feel similarly that you'd want to get this layout. I do. This is one. There's certain layouts where I pull out the stops. Because I'm particularly captivated by it. I just because I can't do this level of detail with every. I could, but then I wouldn't make as many. And for me, the part of the fun of what I do is this idea of exploring all these different types of approaches of how to build the layout. So for the most part, I don't really want to get on one that I'm gonna fixate on for months on end. The secret project is an exception to that, but yeah. Every once in a while, I'll come across one where it's like I want to make sure I'm doing this as to the best of my abilities within training, and this is one where I feel there's a few things I'm seeing where like okay, I'd do that a bit differently because it has been a few years since I made it, but boy, does it make me happy. And that's part of the fun of it is like I probably will never. I don't know if I'll ever get to see the real thing, but I got to bring a slice of it home for myself, and hopefully it's something that you guys download and you enjoy on your own. Because it's a fun little thing. And actually, I think I even packaged this activity that you're watching me do. I think I even packaged it with the route, so you could just run the session. I don't think you even have to create and stage the session. Just when you can. It's been a while since I released it. So, have fun with it. Oh, and I will say, it absolutely lends itself in certain ways. In some ways, it looks a little goofy, but you can run a nice 040 dockside tanker on it with tank engine on it with American box cars, and it still vibes. It still checks out. Okay, so with these cars moved over here, I am now going to be moving the locomotive coal to the malting. Oh, okay, interesting. I am here for that. That is a different thing. Okay, so do that. I'm going to grab that coal wagon. We're pretending it's empty now. And this is the thing. As you've seen, we've gone some rounds where we haven't moved either of the coal wagons. So part of the intrigue is that you're not moving all the same cars every single time. There's a little bit of a variety in let's see your comment mark. Let me pull that up again. You always enjoy you're most captivated by the routes I reviewed that felt like I could stand somewhere in the world and watch trains like a pedestrian in the world. Yes. I strive to put scenes and regions in my routes that I myself would want to see and visit in real life, even if they never existed. Yeah, so two thoughts on that. First, from a train sim standpoint, and then from a model railroad standpoint. because I went to the Caribbean recently, I reviewed, watched my my episode on um, Seaview, the fictional route with all the crazy. So, Seaview was an MSTS route where it had all these different islands with all these different themes. Like, there was a Jurassic Park kind of island, a space island with all sorts of space equipment, um, space shuttles and the like, a volcano island, an underground island, an underwater island. I mean, it was insane. And there's a review on it. If you go to atherailyard.com, you can watch that episode. And I reviewed it recently because being in the Caribbean, and what I love about that route is that it is so outlandishly crazy, but it feels, in a weird way, believable. Like, it's just so well done for what it is, as to make you believe it could be a thing, like a theme park or something along those lines. I loved doing the sea view. That was a fun review that allowed me to do things creatively from a filmmaking standpoint that I don't ordinarily get to do. And so Seaview is one where you wouldn't necessarily think of that off the top of the cuff because it's so fantasy, but it's so well done as a fantasy as to make you think that maybe, just maybe, it exists. And even for a fictional route, had a nice little assortment of things you could do operationally. I remember there was a desert island that had there was this like orange grove that you could switch cars in and out of. Seaview was special. From a model railroading standpoint, one of the scenes that stuck with me. Oh wait, now I have to remember what I'm doing. So we're gonna run around and pretend. So this is basically, we're dropping off this coal car, coal wagon, simulating the idea that it is being taken out of the world to be. It is empty and it is taken out of the world to be filled. Going back. Now we need to grab another set of casks from ale storage, and we are going to take them to the brewery bank. Okay. Toggle that switch so that doesn't work. That way. In fact, cars I need are... No, not those cars. Wait. I need ale store bottling cars. Oh, no. I need to grab those cars and move them to the Steam Cooper's to ale store. Oh, okay. Looking too far ahead. So... Need to grab... Nope. These cars... Okay, I'm making these cars and moving them here. All right, I can do that. Too many things at once. But hey, I haven't crashed so far, so that's a good sign. So, model railroading scene that's fun out. So, my first exposure to a train layout, my dad's train layout. He, being that he grew up in Canada, was born and raised in Canada, and had a love of CP and CN, which he managed to instill into me. He modeled Ottawa to Mattawa, Ontario, CP mainline, as it was in the 50s and 60s. Mostly 60s, because most of what we had were diesel. The interesting thing is he wanted to model Canadian stuff, but a lot of model railroad manufacturers didn't know that there was this country called Canada. You know, Rapido was not a thing, so nobody was making anything for Canadian stuff. Um, so he used Hornby trains from the late 60s. Well, not even Hornby Triane before it merged with Hornby. Made trains for the Canadian market. So he had a bunch of those that, which I now have, which he used for rolling stock for this layout. But anyway, you didn't need to know all that. But you're here with me, and now you do all that. So he, I forgot we didn't have any cars there right now. So one of my favorite scenes on that whole layout, ironically enough, had nothing to do with trains. It was overlooking this river, and there was this kind of you wouldn't call it a parking lot, like a little pull off, essentially. Like there was enough room that he had this car with a camper as a camper trailer, and there was enough room that you could park the car and the camper trailer underneath the shade of this tree in view of the river. And that was one of my favorite scenes on the whole layout. Had nothing to do with trains, but I just, that to the Arctic point earlier about this idea of and Risos, those places that you could live on a layout. That was a place I could have lived in. That was a scene that made me feel really good. I love that. I love that space. That just this little space made me feel things, and still remember it very vividly. Whole layout was really impressive for essentially taking toy trains, because yes, they were double O, but they were goofy curves and stuff, and making it as prototypical as well. Okay, so now that those have moved, we are now going to take the casks from the Half Moon Outer Bank, which is going to be cars, and move them to Half Moon Long Island. Yeah. Actually, it's these empty ones. Yeah, it's the empty one. Hey, Luca. Kitty cameo. Kitty cameo time. Okay. Which is 11. Oh, we're just moving these empty cars back in? Is that what I want to be doing? So many cuts of cars. Yes, these empty cars are going back in that track, which is where they started. Okay, I can do that. I think I'm moving the right cut of cars. Yes, that makes sense because we cleared up the siding so that... Yep, alright. I know what I'm doing now. Kind of, sort of. Except I'm gonna... But I can get them out of the way. We'll do it that way. That switch. And there we go. So I need to get these cars into that siding, which means I need these cars temporarily out of the way. But I'm right about that, because those cars started where I'm going to move those cars. Yep. I know I am. A for me, B for me. I'm glad to have you guys join me. I'm glad you enjoyed my story time. So, half Canadian, you know what? I hear it now. You know, it's funny. People have heard that in me, and I think it's a very subtle thing. Because I was born and raised in the U.S., but yes, uh, I think it's kind of in there. I could extend it and make it kind of come out a little bit more. I mean, I know saying A is a little bit cheating, but I know how to draw it out a little bit more if I wanted to. But very subtle kind of thing. But clearly, it's in there even when I'm not exactly trying to make it evident. Okay. These guys, they're the switch, so I can push them out of the way. See, this is why I do end-to-end routes. Yes, that means it's taking me 10 years to make anything going. Yeah, and certainly, obviously, you can spend a long time making a route. The one that comes to mind as far as a long development time is the Monon. Rick Berg, who created the Monon. To have the patience to make something like 500 miles of mainline Class 1 railroad, make it well, that route is insanely good. I'm pretty sure I gave that the platinum when I reviewed it, and it deserved it. It's such a good route, and I know it took them years to do it. Amazing project that whole thing is. So we've got these cars going into here. You know, maybe we could finish this whole thing out. How many more moves do I got to make? Is that the last cycle actually does half of the stuff doesn't even move in the last cycle. So maybe we could make this all. What is? We're coming up on the time. Maybe we could finish the whole program out. I like the idea. You guys want to finish the program out? I think we could do it in the next 20 minutes. These cars need to be replaced where they were. Then we're not moving the covered vans. We're moving. Interesting. We have to move those kind of tool cars, those covered cars. Those have to go inside the brewery with the malt cars. I don't know. That might be too much. I don't wanna be overstaying my welcome. But we have at least one more move to make. To call it. Well, and then we do the full. Yeah, we'll finish it. Just call it. I feel good about it. Cars are getting repositioned here, which is where they started the whole session. And then we're getting grab these cars and they are going to go in the brewery, and then we get to do another inspection trip. I think I'm going to end after that. I think so, unless you guys really want me to finish out the program, which you probably not. Really want me to finish out the program, I'll do it, but otherwise I'm probably going to wrap it. So cast your votes now if you have any preference when you're watching this. If you're watching this after the fact, then you'll know what I've decided. It's been a while since I've played this, but being back here reminds me of why I spent so much time building. I mean, it was this one was a lot of work, but beyond worth it because it's so much fun. And you wouldn't think, well, is it that much fun if everything's sort of spelled out? And it's like, actually, yeah. sometimes it's not a bad thing to have. It's just a different kind of operation to have this sort of, I'm following this. Again, if you want to see what I'm following, the article is in the download link, which is in the description of this video. So even if you don't have the layout, you can read the article, and it explains progression. It explains this progression that I'm doing. Kind of see. Such a different from the usual sort of, oh, we've got all these freight cars. Okay, well, I guess I'll move those ones over here and then these ones over there. Those should have left enough room that I don't think. Technically, I should switch places with Wort wagons because the Wort wagons need to go out. Yeah, we'll do that. So, but while I'm running around these cars to shove them in, what else would I be doing if I finished off the last round? These cars have to. Wait, did I move something in the wrong place? Cars are supposed to be up in front of me. These cars. Ah, okay. I see. These cars would be moving. Sometimes I wonder about it. I don't tend to watch these streams back. So some of it must be more amusing than I get. Oop. Nope. Okay, for me getting sidetracked. Okay. So, the last steps would be these cars would be getting positioned back over here. I have a feeling I put something in the wrong spot, but I can't quite figure out what. Nope. Those cars go here. These cars go there. That coal car comes back here. This coal car gets sent off. Oh, I was supposed to move that car to the halting move. I missed a step. Well, we can fix that. Maybe that'll be the last thing. So I'll switch these two cars out and I'll move that to the multi loop. So that then it could be placed back. Interesting, they both get moved. Okay. And then these molt cars get moved back to the multi building. There's these cars get moved back out front. And everything else is good. Good stuff. Neat program. But yes, we're definitely going to stop after I get these cars into the building after those, and that coal car gets switched to where it could have been in the last round. Clearly a good time to stop, because I forgot to move a whole car, and that is a sign that my brain is beginning to get fried with all of this. Yes, the actual letter A, not A. Oh, I sound Eastern Canadian. Yeah, well, I mean, my dad grew up in Ottawa, so um, so yes, he was Southern Ontario. He and his family, Southern Ontario. And Rick Berg is definitely an inspiration. I agree with you on that, in more ways than one. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not just that he managed to make an entire class. Monon was a class one 500-mile railroad, whatever it is, with certain connected branch lines of like the Milwaukee and New York Central. Um, in MSTS, but he made it look good. I would say that that route holds up if you were to play it at miles. Okay, so these cars go in, we pick up that coal car, we shunt it over to where the other coal wagon is, then we call it a day, and that feels good to me. But hopefully you have found this to be a fun, interesting, different kind of history. I've really enjoyed this. Great to talk with you guys about this plan, which this plan is why I encourage you to read the British magazines, read modeling magazines from other countries, because it is so interesting to see the different mentalities that exist with different countries. What what are the types of plans that you see? What are the types of operations? It's the Brits. Sometimes you see things and you go, "Oh, that kind of resembles an American layout," and other times it's like, "Wow!" But a lot of times it's a very own thing. And again, with the show culture, there's so much of more of an emphasis on these individual small um, layouts that tour rather than big club. Let's piece a bunch of layouts together. It's just again not better or worse, just a different approach. Oh, I got my coal wagon. We're gonna grab this coal wagon. We're gonna drop it off outside the malting's house, and then we're gonna call it at night. Hopefully, this is. I like. It's nice to have a reason to come back to the U.S. I tend to do a lot of things in the U.S. Reason, because right now most of my UK viewership is asleep and not able to appreciate it, and that's okay. Um, but something different. I do this, certainly for for my UK fans. Thank you for watching this on repeat, or if you're staying up super late, good on you for that. But if you're not, that's okay. But I like to find these different elements of what I think makes for an interesting layout, especially where it's not conventional plan. It's certainly not a conventional plan or a conventional operating one. Okay. Make sure I have all my. I really don't want to crash. Alright. We are all set to our final nice look down High Street. The entrance for Holting's house. Oh, I suppose I should give a quick peek of the cab. Oh. we go. So, with that said, we have completed 3 of the 4. 2 hours. Yeah, it's been about 2 hours. 2 hours time, and we're still only about 3/4 of the way through the entire program of how you would run copper. It is a heck of an interesting track plan that I tried to do justice with making in Train Z. Um, I, uh, I love what I love this layout so much. I think if 3 takeaways from this, number one, tight tight scenes. I love how there's so many different ways you can view this, and each way reveals something different. Um, I mean, even just this as a diorama is interesting to me visually. Number two, staging is not essential. Depends. I mean, a lot of the time staging is, but this operating scheme where everything is kind of live staging and the cars are within the scene, but you just move them around, it's fun. I mean, it may not always be the most realistic, especially if you can't unload your loaded cars or vice versa. Um, but there's a lot. But I honestly, when I'm playing it, it doesn't really bother me that much if I'm like moving an empty cut of cars from away from the brewery, and that that there's different ways to think about a loop. I mean, this is something that could have been designed as a sort of straight layout, but it's a very unique way of having a loop. I mean, there's probably 20 other things I could point to and say what makes this layout great, but those are the things that come off the top of my mind. So, with that said, I'm going to conclude tonight's stream. Thank you so much for joining me. Next month, again, we're going to be we're going to be revisiting the Virginian, the model railroad Virginian, but we're going to be building it in a new form. Other than that, be sure to check out greattrainlayouts.com for the routes that I release. If you want early access, you can find them on Patreon. If you want to download this is already released. Link in the description. Thank you to Rapido Trains UK. If you're looking for high quality freight wagons, you can find them and pre-order them on rapidotrains.co.uk. And if you watch this and you think, man, Nick, this is beautiful, and I'd like your help with pre-visualizing my layout or designing it from scratch, I do take commissions. And I would be happy to help you out. And you can learn more at greattrainlayouts.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night or rest of your day.